Good morning. Welcome today to our panel on disruption. Beyond disruption, new rules for a new world. I'm joined today by Terrance Mauri, who is the founder of Hack Future Labs, a global think tank that helps business leaders to navigate complex futures. He's an entrepreneur mentor in residence at MIT and has been described as an outspoken and influential thinker on the future of leadership by Thinkers 50. His new book, The 3D Leader, Take Your Leadership to the Next Dimension, has been shortlisted for Financial Times and McKinsey's Business Book of the Year award. Welcome, Terrance, and thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Husam, and it's a pleasure to join you this morning. What a fantastic opportunity to create some reflection and some reimagination. Today, I want to give you the equivalent of a double espresso to shake up your thinking. Reimagination means two things: the courage to learn and the curiosity to unlearn. Learning helps us evolve. Unlearning helps us keep up as the world evolves. It's fair to say that over the last 19 months, everything changed. People changed, the office changed, technology changed, priorities changed. Even my 7-year-old son changed. I now call him my CTO, not Chief Technology Officer, Child Technology Officer. If you've got a family, you've probably got one. So, everybody's talking about this word disruption, and it's true. These words can become buzzwords. They can lose their specificity. So I want to take you on a journey today to ask one big catalytic question. How do you harness disruption, not as a headwind, but as a tailwind for renewal and for growth? If you think about it, every company starts as an act of imagination. But to sustain vitality for the long term, you also need to practice the capability of reimagination. And we're all interested in that. So, what questions do you want to be remembered for? What's the bravest question you can ask yourself today? When you're operating at the edge of uncertainty, questions matter more than answers. If you stop for 4 minutes every day to ask new types of questions, that's 24 hours of new questions a year. Here are 5 big catalytic questions we're going to address over the next 25 minutes. And the big one I want you to take away is, how do you stay resilient and relevant in a world of speed, complexity, and machines? In Finland, they call this sisu. I want you to remember this word. It means Viking spirit, an alchemy of courage, grit, and anti-fragility, the ability to bounce back and bounce forward from shocks and stresses, supply chain disruptions, for example. So, change, it used to happen as a breeze. Now it feels like a Category 5 typhoon, blurring of industry lines, economic and geopolitical uncertainty, disruptive technologies such as AI and deep learning, shrinking of company and product lifespans, even job lifespans, and a global pandemic. How does disruption happen? As Ernest Hemingway wrote in the book, The Sun Also Rises, it happens in 2 ways: gradually, then suddenly. Whether it's Klarna disrupting the $8 trillion credit card market, or PayPal unbundling financial services, it's fair to say that today is the slowest it will ever be in your lifetime. And depending on your personality type, that's either exciting and exhilarating or terrifying. Take a few moments to look at your colleagues around the room, and you'll be able to see very clearly who's excited about this idea of disruption and who is terrified. What's interesting about this story is that Goldman Sachs has celebrated its 151-year history, PayPal 20-year history. In the last 10 years, over $1 trillion has been raised in fintech. And in the last 6 months alone, around $60 billion. What is PayPal doing? Well, it is taking advantage of new world DNA, network effects, speed of scale, speed of innovation, speed of talent, high asset productivity, and an ecosystem's perspective. To give you a concrete example of that, in the last 5 years alone, PayPal has registered 1,500 patents, including a payment system using your fingerprint. That's 26x more than Goldman Sachs. Why does disruption happen? All sorts of reasons, but I'll give you some of the biggest examples. Number one, activist investors. We've seen over the last 18 months proxy wars being won by hedge funds such as Value Act, Engine One, and Third Point. Of course, unhappy clients, broken business models, legacy mindsets, legacy operating models, legacy cultures, and active inertia, and blind spots. As human beings, we're blind to our own blindness. We get trapped in optimism bubbles, and that can be one of the biggest sources of self-disruption. So, the future has already happened. Cars that can drive themselves, platforms that can anticipate our every needs, robots capable of everything from advanced manufacturing to complex surgery. What this means for you in the room today is that you need to master the new logic of competition. What do I mean by that? You're competing on the rate of learning. You're competing on ecosystems. According to Accenture, $66 trillion revenue pool in the next 5 years. You're competing on physical and digital, or phygital. You're competing on intelligence. I call this ROI, not return on investment, return on intelligence, return on imagination, return on integrity, and return on innovation. And you're competing on resilience and anti-fragility, that Sisu spirit. What this means is that you need to update your mindset, new rules for a new world. And in order to harness disruption as a tailwind for reinvention or renewal or growth, we need to understand the history of disruption. Because we tend to think of disruption as a new word. It's not. The history of humanity is a history of disruption. 100,000 years ago, we harnessed fire, which led to language. 10,000 years ago, we developed cities and commerce, which led to the modern marketplace. And today, we stand at a new inflection point, this convergence of big data, deep learning, AI, automation, and algorithm. Here's a scary truth. The next biggest competitor in your sector will probably come from an industry adjacent to yours in the next 5 years. Every vertical will be fundamentally reshaped by these superpowers of cloud, automation, mobile, and the Internet of Things. And when we're confronted with disruption, we have two choices. One, we can go into denial mode. We can avoid. And that typically leads to atrophy, stagnation, and slow death. It's no surprise that, according to Gartner, over the next 7 years, 50% of the S&P will probably disappear due to disruption, industry disruption, business model disruption. In fact, business models are going off like yogurt in the fridge. So, disruption presents two options. One, we can avoid it, which leads to stagnation and atrophy and slow death. Or two, we can actually anticipate it and harness it for renewal and for growth and for learning. Disruption is the rule, survival is a choice. Yes, digitization, automation, cloud transformation is accelerating. According to Microsoft, we're jumping from 5 to 10% of GDP spending on IT in the next 5 years. Yes, business models are going off like yogurt in the fridge, as I said, but I truly believe that you are still in the driving seat. So, what can you do right now to turn uncertainty into action? Because the world is more turbulent, less knowable, more complex, less varied. It doesn't help that our brains are hardwired to dislike uncertainty, so we tend to avoid it. There are 4 big trend lines that I want you to think about, and I want to give you a call to action. Think about 3 possible futures. Often we're nowists. Let me describe to you what a nowist is. A nowist is somebody who lives in the present. And most companies are prisoners of a nowist strategy. What they do is they focus on present-forward strategic thinking. They apply their existing assumptions, operating models, and mindsets to a future world. What you want to be doing is a future-back strategy, jumping ahead and thinking about how the world is going to change across the whole financial services value chain, and then coming back to the present in order to anticipate, not just react to these trend lines, but get in front of them and turn trend lines into growth and reimagination opportunities. So number 1 is what I call optimized reality. We're reinventing business models around data and AI and automation. Around 28% of companies on the planet today have replatformed to the cloud. But over the next 5 years, we're going to see 100% replatforming not just companies, but industries and ecosystems. So optimized reality. Number 2 is ethical impact. Ethical impact. Paul Polman, the ex-CEO of Unilever, talks about a net positive future. Mark Carney, the former governor of the Bank of England, talks about the race to zero. Larry Fink at BlackRock talks about a net zero mindset. And what we're seeing is a decarbonization of portfolios around the world. The new world DNA is clearly social change, inclusive growth, and sustainability. We're moving from a black world to a green world, a more sustainable world, a click economy, clean, lean, inclusive, and circular. Trend line number 3. A couple of days ago, I got invited to speak at First Abu Dhabi Bank. They've launched a very fantastic initiative. It's called Talent Hub. The big idea here is that money is the currency of transactions. Talent is the currency of transformation. We're moving from a one-thing workforce, so for example, talent hoarding to talent sharing, career ladders to career climbing walls, command and control to care and co-creation. Thomas Friedman, the writer, talks about a future-proof workforce, because one of the best ways to outpace the forces of disruption is to be in a perpetual state of beta. So, number 3 is about choosing beta, one-thing workforce to the anything workforce. This is a bit like training your workforce for the Olympics without knowing which particular event they're going to be in. This is about creating an agile and adaptive workforce. And the Talent Hub at First Abu Dhabi Bank is a global talent marketplace to create, increase, and amplify talent mobility. Because, of course, in order to win the future, we also need to win the war for talent. The final trend line that you need to anticipate and get in front of is what I call the new meta. And this has nothing to do with Facebook. I was very annoyed when Facebook rebranded themselves as Meta. Meta means evolution. It means transcendence. It's like a moth to a butterfly or lead to gold. It's like playing chess, and halfway through, the rules of the game change. And we can see, because of these exponential technologies, new platforms, industries to ecosystems, what we're seeing is a new meta, new competitive lines being redrawn. These are 4 big trend lines that I want you to think about, and 3 possible futures: a probable future, a plausible future, and a possible future. And I want you to think about 3 strategies which you can scale vertically and horizontally across your organization. Number 1, do these trend lines inform your strategy? Number 2, do you watch closely? Or finally, number 3, do you need to take decisive action today? So what are some big rules that you can take away to harness disruption as a tailwind for renewal, for learning, for growth, to be future prepared? I'm going to share three. Number one is we need to rethink purpose. And what I mean by that is human, financial, ethical, digital. I define purpose as the source code for meaning, contribution, and significance. And the ROI, the return on equity, actually, on a purpose-driven organization is around 13.1% compared to a non-purpose-driven company of 3.1%. Here we can see disruption happening across the workforce. Some names that you've come across recently over the last 19 months, the big quit, the great reassessment, the great resignation. 2 out of 3 people are reconsidering why they do what they do. I think one of the most shocking statistics is around 23% of the global workforce have mentally quit the job, but I haven't told you. You do the maths on that. So we need to reimagine the work, how it's done, why it's done, the workplace, and the workforce in order to create a purpose-driven, future-fit, resilient organization. Because, of course, your culture is also your operating system. We're also suffering from anticipatory anxiety. And COVID has been an accelerant for that in so many ways. It's been an accelerant for e-commerce, for remote work, for automation, for new business models and platforms, but also anticipatory anxiety. This is anxiety about the future. 1 out of 5 people are worried that their job will be automated in the next 5 years, for example. And by the way, anticipatory anxiety and performance and innovation are like oil and water. They're a performance killer. So purpose is a clarifier. Purpose is an energizer. Purpose is a simplifier because we're drowning in data. People keep telling me that data is the new oil. I disagree. Data is the new burden. 73% of data is not used. And what it means is that your attention, your leadership attention is being eroded. So what might a future financial institution look like? I think it's a balance of human and machine. We heard about HI, human intelligence, alongside AI. I think it's an opportunity to really scale up this new world DNA, network effects, speed of scale, high asset productivity, omni-channel experiences. And what do your customers want? Well, we have Amazonification in the world. We have antification. We have Teslaization. This sets the new benchmark for your clients and customers. What they want is zero friction, zero distance, predictive and personalized. And technology is the enabler. So, rule number 1, uncertain times require certainty of purpose. The only certainty now is uncertainty. So can you articulate your why, your purpose, as a leader and as an institution? What's rule number 2? Trust. Trust is the new oil. Think about it. It's fragile. It's lost very easily. And in some ways, we're living in the age of truth decay. 10 out of 15 industries have suffered major trust breaches over the last 5 years. And we've got some big examples here, including McKinsey opioid scandal, the Boeing MAX 737, VW emissions, and the list goes on. And to give you a concrete example of what impact that has, for a bank with a market capitalization of $30 billion US, if they suffer a major data privacy breach, they can expect to forego up to $5 billion in lost revenue. So we can see here, research from Hat Future Lab, that trust in media, trust in government, trust in business is going in the wrong direction. You need to go big on 3 things as an institution, as a bank, as a leader: truth, trust, and transparency. Here we can see a story of stock market star to stock market scandal. This is known as Germany's Enron. Wirecard was one of the most successful fintechs in Germany, with a market capitalization of around 24 billion euros. But as you can see from the storyline, 1.9 billion euros missing, a number of the directors on the run, and it's one of the most damaging accounting scandals for a fintech in Europe. The writer George Orwell would have loved these times. We have digital warfare, memes, tainted foods, data privacy breaches. Cybercrime itself will cost the planet $6 trillion in the next 3 years. What does this mean? Well, rule number 2 is about scaling trust. Trust is the new oil. And if you think about trust, even trust is being disrupted. We've moved from local trust to institutional trust and now distributed trust. And the enabler is technology. When you've got trust, ecosystems of trust and ecosystems of excellence, it allows you to make trust leaps into the future. It allows you to navigate uncertainty. It allows you to place faith in others, in services and new products. And it reduces risk. Here we can see research from Hat Future Lab showing that 86% of those polled want CEOs to step up, to have a point of view around social change and sustainability and inclusion and diversity and equity. So, rule number 2 is scale trust. Human, financial, ethical, technological. What's our final rule? I hear you cry. The final rule is New World DNA. Do you have New World DNA or Old World DNA? Old World DNA is about scaling efficiency and doing things right. And that's important. But the ratio of assumptions to knowledge is at the highest it's ever been. So we need to scale up what I call New World DNA. That means predictive, personalized. It means high velocity. It means turning uncertainty into action and learning and experimenting. So, New World DNA. What does that look like? Well, 2 points to take away here. Darwin, the anthropologist, said, it's no longer about the survival of the fittest, it's about the survival of the most paranoid, the fastest. Extinction is the rule, survival is a choice. Here we can see a story of the mighty ExxonMobil. In the last 5 years, they've lost $175 billion of shareholder value. And you may have seen in the press that this year there was a big proxy battle by Engine One to get a number of independent directors on the board. And they did it. And I can tell you the CEO, Darren Woods, was not happy about that. And what the new directors are doing is driving forward this sustainability agenda. Extinction is the rule, survival is a choice. Final point, another reason to scale up New World DNA is answering this question with courage and clarity. What's your BMI? I don't mean this as a personal question. Not body mass index, bureaucratic mass index. Think about all the unnecessary complexity, rules, processes, protocols that can get in the way of high-value work. It's a performance killer. If you look at the average BMI score in a financial services organization, it's about 68%. 68%. And that's too much. We need to fight complexity, not with complexity, but with simplicity. I'd spent some time recently working with VW, which is another legacy company that's reinventing itself around software with a hardware capability. And its point of view on the future is scaling a software and capability stack, and speed and velocity will be the key differentiator. So we need to scale up New World DNA, and we need to fight complexity, not with complexity, but with simplicity. And here we have research from MIT looking at 9 organizational imperatives that you can think about to activate a New World DNA in your organization. From who we are, which is about strengthening your identity, to how we operate, which is speed and simplicity, right through to how you grow, which is taking a more ecosystems view of your operating model. So, final few moments here Today, I wanted to give you the equivalent of a double espresso or a pumpkin spice latte to shake up your thinking. What can you do to reimagine? Two things: the curiosity to learn and the courage to unlearn. What's the number one takeaway today? Well, as you read through my concluding thoughts, the one I want to leave you with is you cannot navigate the 21st century. You cannot navigate the 21st century with a 20th century map. And remember that we are blind to our own blindness. Yes, success breeds success, but don't forget, success can corrupt success. The more intellectual humility you have, the more diversity of capability, of culture, of thinking, the more open you will be to those blind spots, those weak signals, those black swans, and those gray swans that can disrupt your business. I'll leave you with the words of the Nobel laureate, Marie Curie. She said, "In life, nothing is to be feared, only understood. And the more you understand, the less you will fear." Shukran. Thank you.